Tatlo po ang tenor ngayon dito sa Manila Hotel. Yung pangalawa po si Dresden Ramos. Nandiyan po. Mapapakinggan niyo mamaya. Yung pangatlong tenor po, hindi niyo mapapakinggan kasi po siya ang MC ngayon. Sa mga nangyayari po ngayon sa buong bansa, malaki po ang ating pinapasan. Malaki ang ating alalahanin. Pero yan po ay lalong nagiging mabigat dahil po maraming mas matitinding sigalot na nangyayari po sa labas ng ating bayan. Bumabagsak po ang ekonomiya ng pandaigdig. Maraming mga bansa po na nawawala na sa mapa. At sa isip po ng marami, ang solusyon dito ay gera. Yan po ay hindi napapag-usapan dito. Yung mga leader po natin, hindi napapag-usapan dito. Yung mga gusto maging pangulo, hindi nababanggit po yan. Pero kailangan po, tutukan po natin yan. Tutukan ng NTC yan, ng mga obispo, kaparihan at lahat para po maliwanagan natin bayan. Natatawagan po natin ating kaibigan si Butch Valdes para po bahagi sa atin ang kanilang pananaw sa mga isyo. Butch.
Magandang hapon sa lahat. Magandang hapon po especially to Archbishop Arguelles and Bishop Cabaya. At sa lahat ng mga NTC and other corollary and associated organizations that are like-minded and wishing the kind of changes that we need for our country. Napakarami po nating problema talaga sa ating bansa. And the quality of problems we have has brought us into historical situations. For example, we have the worst, historically, we have the worst president ever that ruled our country. Historically, we probably have the worst violations in our Constitution. Historically, we have the worst kinds of atrocities committed by the leadership in terms of allowing people to be massacred in Limamasapa. And historically, the most graft-ridden country in the whole history of the Philippines. Talagang we're making history. But as I've been discussing quite some time for the past years, and have been warning our people, those that are in government, all of us that want changes, like the NTC, are of course in the right direction. But my fear, because of inaction, because of looking for practical solutions, and looking for because we don't have the courage to do what is needed, looking for leaders, looking for supermen to do what is needed to be done. My fear is that events that are going to impact on our country will overtake us. And these couple of days have already manifested precisely that fear. Events that are happening outside the country are going to impact on our lives way beyond any kind of expectation. we seem to be comfortable with not knowing what is going to happen, because ignorance is bliss. Ignorance can be educated. Crazy can be medicated. But stupidity is incurable. Our government seems to be unique in the level of stupidity. But mind you, I have to say, not just this government, but previous governments as well. We have not prepared ourselves for the coming onslaught of a global financial collapse in the magnitude that you have experienced just these last 3 days, and will get worse in the coming days. To give you an idea, the losses, some of you have heard of the 1929 crash in Wall Street in the United States, which created the Great Depression. Not that some of you are as old, but I think some of you have read about this. But in comparison, the 1929 crash, which brought the Great Depression years in the US, wherein people were actually dying, starving to death in the streets of the United States. In comparison to what had just happened these last 3 days, in total losses, what the losses incurred in 1929 is just a minuscule of the total losses just in these last 3 days suffered by many speculative investors in the whole world. When you see China or Wall Street had crashed, you're not talking of individual corporations, individual people or corporations that have lost a lot of money. Wall Street is an investment area of whole nations. The resources of nations, the resources of economies all over the world are substantially invested in Wall Street. And when it crashes, the reserves of all of these countries will disappear, as they are probably doing so at this very moment. A condition unprecedented in the whole history of the world is now upon us. The level of financial collapse, as we have been warning, will happen, because this is not an incident that just happened like that. This happened years ago, when the system that they decided on, those that are moving towards speculation and calling their markets, calling Wall Street, the stock markets as the indicators of economy, when money was being pushed towards speculation away from the productive areas of the economy, that was the signal and the start of the deterioration of world economy. So much so that, as we have been warning, every time there was a so-called, in quotes, correction, they call it a correction, market correction. No, sir. That every correction they call, billions and billions of dollars are lost by speculative investors. Nations, by the way. when there is a so-called correction, banks that are holding the resources, not just of corporations, not just of individuals, but also of economies. They are the underwriters of investments being made by different economies. They are holding this. They invested in Wall Street, and Wall Street collapses. What you had seen before in 1997 and 2008 were indicators of this. What does the Federal Reserve do? What does the European Central Bank do? What was the Japan Central Bank do? They print out money. They call it bailouts. They bail out the very institutions that used our resources to speculate. And so when you say bailout, they print up the money, give it to these banks to play into the speculative market, which they continue to lose. So much so that as of now, over $100 trillion have been printed with no productive asset to back it up into that system. That system of useless money trying to keep alive what is already dead, which is Wall Street. Binubuhay po by this circulation of Kenkoy money, losing value as the US dollar and the euro loses its value because they kept on bailing out these economies and these banks. What happens to the consumers? What happens to the consumers is that their cost of things that they need to buy become more expensive. It's called inflation. And everything else that they need to buy becomes more expensive, including the goods, the cheap goods that they used to be able to buy from China becomes more expensive because there is this unabated printing of their currencies of dollars and euros. What happens to China? Because the consumers of US and Europe can no longer afford as much, they cannot export as much. If they cannot export their goods as much, their factories start to close down. If their factories start to close down, their investors in these factories, the speculators that are playing the markets in China, will move out. That's why there was a crash in China. And it is not China's fault that this had happened. This is that whole system that was pushing all of the resources of the world into speculation. China reacted by devaluing its currency. And as you devalue, what happens? The rest of the world is pushed to devalue too, which will start what we might consider later on, and you will see, called a currency war. There is no one right now, not even the so-called experts in the United States, much less here in the Philippines, that is going to call a spade a spade. I had just come from a press conference in Club Filipino, where I had two so-called prominent economists. I'm sorry, I sometimes call them econoquacks, who were telling in the interview, saying, not to worry, the free market will come into the picture and correct itself. You know, President Hoover, right after the 1929 crash, was saying to the American people exactly that. Do not worry, we are in a free market and the market will correct itself. And that correction meant many, many American citizens dying in the streets of starvation, if not jumping from the buildings because they had lost so much of their savings. And what transpired after this whole situation, if not, because you see, it was not just Wall Street, it was the affected markets, which included Europe. And it was this particular time that a guy named Hitler started to rise. We are just lucky that there was one particular individual who took on the leadership of the United States and started telling people, Wall Street is the culprit. Speculative investments is the culprit. What is speculation? It's gambling. Gambling of other people's money for speculation. And that's what's happening to us. Now, I don't want to douse cold water in the steps that we are taking because they are useful, they are necessary, and obviously important. But the first item in our agenda should be, as a nation, find out how we are going to survive what threatens the very existence of our republic. The impact on the Philippines is something that is unquantifiable and very difficult to define. But one thing for sure, if this continues, and we expect it to continue, there will be unprecedented increases in frequency and in magnitude of price of all commodities. Medicine will be one of them, and the other foods, because all of these producers of food will be impacted by this situation. And the real victims of this will be the population. And once you have a population that is starving, no matter what you do, if that government, if we have an inutile, incompetent, stupid government who will not know what to do, we must make a move. As citizens of this country, regardless of our ideology, regardless of what organization we are coming from, left, right, whatever, we must make a move for the salvation of our country. We in the Save the Nation movement has been saying this for the past maybe close to 10 years. And I call on NTC that through to the initiation that you had made a year ago through the leadership of Archbishop Arguelles, that this transformation be effected right away. Right away. I beg your indulgence if some of you might be affiliated with people who want to be president. In the press con this morning, when somebody asked who among these presidential candidates should we support, my answer was this: to want to be president of this country in the next few years will be stupid. It is the most stupid thing that they can decide on. And the only reason they want to be president is because they're stupid. They don't know the kind of problems this nation is going to face. And we do. That's why I associate with this movement of Archbishop Arguelles, Tata and company, that maybe through this organization and a collective effort of all other organizations, we may still save this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Butch Valdes. Mabuhay si Butch. That statement has made it very, very clear how grave and urgent the situation is. Pero hindi na mamalayan ng ating pamahalaan. So, this is the very reason why the NDC should make its move now. We'll next hear from Archbishop Arguelles and Archbishop Capallan and Gonzalez, but before we call on them, may I ask